Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. When I was drinking, one of the things that I loved about the way alcohol made me feel is that when I got drunk, I could forget about all of the things that I really didn't like about myself. And one of the things I didn't like about myself was that I kind of felt like I was a coward. And I didn't feel like I made decisions based on what I really thought were the right things to do. Although I couldn't, if you had asked me about it back then, I probably couldn't have put it in those terms. And I had a lot of excuses for why alcohol helped me deal with the natural fears that I had in life, the justified fears that I had in life, and why it helped me be more courageous. And in her book, This Naked Mind, Annie Grace talks about what is cowardice really. And I think it's important for us to define this because in my addiction, I felt alcohol gave me courage. And by the definition that I have now, and by the definition Annie Grace gives here, alcohol actually strips us of courage. So I'll read this, and this applies to other drugs as well, but it's especially relevant to alcohol because of the effects that alcohol has on the brain and and the way that people typically use it. So Annie Grace writes, cowardice is when you do not act according to your moral compass, failing to do what you know to be right because of your fear. So I think that's a wonderful definition. I'm going to read it again. Cowardice is when you do not act according to your moral compass, failing to do what you know to be right because of your fear. In my experience, drinking to shut out life and avoid actual issues I knew I needed to deal with was, without a doubt, the act of a coward. And I agree 100%. I convinced myself for a long time that my drinking was to have fun and to enjoy life. And maybe for a little bit it was. Maybe for a little bit my drinking was primarily social. But then slowly I started to find myself drinking when other people weren't drinking, or even when other people were drinking more than they did. And slowly I started to drink for reasons that were slightly different than I originally did. Now, this happens with all sorts of other things in life. Exercise, for example. You might start exercising for a reason like you need to lose weight and get in shape. But once you've lost weight and you get in shape, you don't necessarily stop exercising. Your motivations to do so change a little bit. And now you exercise because it feels good, because it helps you relax, because it keeps you healthy. So the just because you start one way doesn't mean it stays the same throughout your life cycle of either addiction or other behaviors in your life. And so for me, alcohol and my use of alcohol changed over time. And as time went on, I started to use it more out of fear than anything. And let's read more about what she says about this part here. We fear ridicule as much as bodily harm. Say you were pressured into trying a drug for the first time. The fear of looking weak, cowardly, and stupid in front of your friends outweighs your fear of the drug. You ignore your instincts to avoid scorn. This is cowardice, not bravery. It's much harder to make the right decision, the better decision, and endure the blow to your ego. It is much harder to go against the grain, skipping the drink and showing your children a different way than it is to be swept along in our drinking culture. That is courage. Drinking because everyone else is doing it or because you are worried about being left out is not. It takes great courage to stand up for what is right, to stand up to the majority, even silently, by ordering an iced tea rather than a beer. It takes courage to read this book. There is no bravery in using alcohol to rid yourself of fear. And that is the most important message that I took from this paragraph. There is no bravery in using alcohol to rid yourself of fear. There's also extreme cowardice in doing so. And I can't tell you how long I used alcohol knowing that I should not be using alcohol. It was years when I knew I had a problem. I knew there was something wrong, because there was, whenever I thought, man, maybe I should cut back or maybe I should stop altogether, the fear that came into me was debilitating. I could not imagine life without alcohol. And in fact, to give myself a little thought experiment with it, I used to ask myself, if a doctor came to you tomorrow and said, you can keep drinking, but you will die in a year, or you can stop drinking and you'll live for 50, what would you choose? And I honestly couldn't decide, because I could not imagine living without alcohol. And that's the grip that it had on me, and that's the cowardice that I had. I was so afraid of living without alcohol that I could not imagine giving it up for more life. And that doesn't make any sense at all. So if you find yourself in that position, that is a good indication that you have got a problem with alcohol dependency, with addiction, with substance use disorder, whatever you want to call it. It's a good indication you need help to seriously look at the way that you consume alcohol, and consider getting it out of your life. Because what I have found in a life without alcohol, now for 5 years almost, I've been without alcohol in my life. For about 4.5 years, I haven't had a drink. And the rewards of living a life where you're faced with fears and then you just you confront them, and you deal with them, and you figure out what mistakes you made, and then you get better at dealing with them next time, and you grow from those experiences. This is life well lived. And it's hard sometimes, and there are times that it's frustrating in ways that it wasn't when I was drinking, because when I was drinking, I didn't have to think about it. I could just, if something happened that I didn't like, I could just get drunk and forget about it temporarily. And, but this is way better, because I get to experience life and then grow from it. And then the happiness that I have in life is because of the way I'm living it, and not because of temporary relief from it. So I'll say that again. The happiness I get from life in sobriety is because of the way I'm living it, not because of the temporary relief I get from it, from alcohol. And that's a key for me, is that I want to be happy because I'm living life, not because occasionally I get to take a break from it. That doesn't make any sense. So it's been very important for me to recognize that so much of my behavior was cowardly behavior in my addiction. And I don't get anything out of that. That doesn't, my life is in no way improved by continuing to live that way. And I know that if I went back to drinking, I would go back to that cowardly behavior like that. It would be such a quick transition. And that's why I have to live the rest of my life sober, without drinking, without drug use, in order to follow my moral compass the way that Annie Gray says in her book, the way that she says is the courageous way to live. That's the way I've got to move forward. If I don't do that, I'm moving backwards, and I'm heading back to where I've been. And that was a life of a coward. And I don't want to ever do that again. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.